Christians may think about Hollywood or pop culture and have a certain opinion on its influence in the church. And there may be the opinion that if we as Christians pay too much attention to the secular world, we could be led astray by pagan propaganda. Well, I really don't believe that. Everything is rated now when we talk about movies or TV, video games, books, and even comic books. They're rated for a reason, and that's so we can use discretion. And here's something we should think about in regarding to this issue. If God created mankind in his image, and his DNA is in each one of us, whether we put our faith in him or not, then his work will inevitably leak out into the work that we produce. So when a Hollywood producer makes a movie, when a TV executive greenlights a series about comic book heroes, there's a good chance that a little bit of God is going to be imprinted into the storylines, even though they may not even realize it. And I think that happens more often than not. In fact, I think that's why the whole idea of a hero being in the mainstream media so often is so successful. God is everywhere, and he enables these stories to be written and to be received by those that he created. So it's not far-fetched if you really think about it. And that's why we think these next 4 weeks are going to be so interesting. That's why we think that these next 4 weeks are going to be so impactful. And that's why we think this series, this hero series that we're in, we think your friends, if you're inviting them, hopefully you have been inviting them, they're going to relate to this stuff pretty easily. So, welcome to our first week of Hero. We are planning on looking at four prominent characters, 4 prominent superheroes that deal with 4 critical issues that really how a Christian should think and live their life. The first issue that we're going to be talking about today is morality. And the Bible says that there actually is right and wrong. And that definition comes from God. He gives us laws to live by, not so he can limit our freedom, but so he can liberate us. He can liberate us so we can be all that we can be as individuals, as families, as communities. That is what God's intention is. The world really doesn't believe that about morality. You'll get several opinions about what morality is in the world. One of the things that the world says is there's not a right and wrong. One of the things, basically they're saying it's instead of right and wrong, it's strong and weak. And basically the person with the biggest budget or the biggest biceps are the ones who gets to decide what is right. That's what Darwin teaches us with survival of the fittest. Other people may say that morality has to be put to a vote. We live in a democracy. So what's right is what everyone agrees on. What's popular opinion becomes what's right. Popular opinion would say you get to vote laws in, and whatever the popular vote is, that's what moral is to do. That's what is moral to do. And that kind of sounds familiar with what's happening today in our culture. Others more recently say it's not what the majority thinks. It's what I feel. What makes it right is what feels good to me. Does it feel right to me? But the Christian comes back and says, you know what? God said it, and that's what makes it right to me. And we're going to look at a hero today that most definitely has been associated with morality. It's 4th of July weekend. We're celebrating the birth of our country and all the freedom that we enjoy from the men and women who sacrifice so much. How could we not look at Captain America? It's a no-brainer, right? Captain America, 4th of July weekend. If you don't know much about Captain America, I'll give you kind of a crash course on this. He's got a real simple story. And I love the way that he was depicted in the first movie that came out in 2011, The First Avenger. He's this, Steve Rogers, he's a 98-pound weakling, and he's got this really good heart. And he wants to go to war with the United States and fight the evils that are overtaking Europe and trying to overtake the whole world, but he continues to be rejected by the army over and over and over again because, frankly, he's a physical liability. But he runs into this doctor named Abraham Erskine, who's got this formula that could make him into a super soldier. So he gets injected with it, and undoubtedly the story needs a villain, and the nemesis for Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America, is the Red Skull. His name is Johann Schmidt, and the comic book writers give him this name in German, but if you translate that into English, it's John Smith, which is really, it's kind of like a John Doe. It's really a representation of every man. And Johann Schmidt, years earlier, had gotten a hold of that same formula. Maybe not the same formula. It was before Erskine had perfected it, and it wasn't ready yet. But Johann Schmidt injects himself, and he becomes this very powerful monster, this Red Skull. And Johann Schmidt will eventually meet up with Captain America, and that's the plot of this story that we're going to look at a little bit today. And if you've ever seen the movie Captain America, the First Avenger, more than likely you've probably caught this great moral lesson that's going on. And actually there are at least three lessons that we can learn about morality from Captain America. One of those being that morality is exposed by power. We often think as morality as this personal morality, a private morality. It's what I myself don't do. I don't get drunk. I don't sleep around. I don't extort money. That makes me a good person. But the Bible's pretty clear about morality. It's not really about what you don't do. Rather, it's something that you do. And using this power that God has put in your control for the benefit of those who are powerless. That's morality. And if God has given you power as a single mom, as a coach, as a school teacher, as a politician, all power that God has given you is so that you would use it for the powerless. Up to the time of Jesus, there were no politicians in the world that lived their lives like that gave their power to the powerless. Jesus showed us, though, he showed us a new and a better way. And it's modeled for us. What's great about this hero, it's modeled for us in this movie, this Captain America First Avenger. I want to show you a clip that kind of sets the tone for this issue of morality being exposed by power. Steve Rogers, still a 98-pound weakling, and he's trying again to enlist into the army, but they've stopped him one more time. But Dr. Erskine meets him, and he explains to him why he would be chosen here for this science experiment. The key line from that clip is when Rogers says, "I don't want to kill anyone. I don't like bullies. I don't care where they're from." And what he's showing us is that he has the right heart to receive the great power that Dr. Erskine can give him. That he's more than capable of giving him with this injection. And I think that's really all of us. Nobody likes bullies. We despise bullies. Even if you are a bully, probably you don't like to be bullied either. No matter where you find bullies, you don't like them. You don't like them on the playground. You don't like terrorists bullying other countries or other beliefs. You don't like it when it's governmental oppression, that kind of bullying. You find violence in inner cities, and you don't like that kind of bully. We don't like bullies anywhere. We don't like mean people. But we don't feel like there's a whole lot we can do about it because we don't have the ability to stop it. But here's the lesson from Captain America, our hero here, and the lesson from the Bible. God doesn't need your strength. He doesn't need the muscle. He doesn't need the power like that. He needs your heart. And that's why in the Old Testament, when God was looking for the right king, not King Saul, the right king, he found a man after God's own heart in King David. And I think God is searching through all of our campuses. I think that he's looking for people with the right heart. Because like Dr. Erskine, in Captain America, God has a formula to make you immensely powerful. But it doesn't come in a test tube. It's deeper than that. It comes from the Holy Spirit of God, and it gives you all the power that you need for all the battles that you come across, for all the enemies that you're going to encounter. God does have the power to make you strong, but not if you don't have the right heart. And that's why he's looking for people to do what he simply commanded us to do. In the Old Testament book of Micah, we read, "He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God." And when God finds a person with this kind of heart, he can give all the power that they need to defeat their enemies. There's another lesson that you find from our hero, Captain America, and that is that morality is revealed by reflex. What you do when you don't have time to think is who you really are. That's reflex. I want to give you a couple of dates. And I want you to roll the clip in your mind because you have something that's rolling. You have a video to roll here. Here's the first date. September 11th, 2001. Can you see it? You see the clip rolling? There are crowds running away from burning buildings, yet there are some few brave souls that are going back towards the smoke, back towards danger, instead of running away from it. What makes a hero do that? Here's another date, April 15th, 2013. Maybe that one's not so familiar. But if I say Boston Marathon bombing, you get this idea. Right at the end of the finish line of the Boston Marathon, people are scattering because of massive devastation. Yet there are some who are running back to help those who are powerless. What makes a hero do things like that? I want to show you another clip from this movie again. It's when Steve Rogers is still a weakling, but now he's going to go through this boot camp. He's already been through most of the boot camp with these other recruits, and it seems that he's failing at everything. Whenever they're running, he's lagging behind. Whenever they're doing push-ups, he can hardly keep up. He can't keep up. And he has this commanding officer. His name's Colonel Phillips, and he doesn't like him one bit. And Phillips and Dr. Erskine get into this argument about why he's still here. What is he doing in this boot camp? And Erskine says he should stay. Watch how their argument unfolds. Is this a test? Yes, it is a test. I wish there would be a test to see if you would be the one to jump on a grenade to save your platoon. Instead of that, let's try another test. I have a couple of questions that help you maybe to identify your character. Nobody's going to know the answers to this test but you. So kind of roll it in your mind. Maybe you write it down in your notes there. Answer these questions for me, if you will. These 3 questions about your heart. Question number 1, what do you do when no one's looking? If you were to go through the receipts of your last business trip when you were out of town, while you were away from your family, away from your friends, would you be shocked? Would we be shocked at what we would find that you spent money on? If we put a surveillance camera in your home when nobody else was there, would we be embarrassed by what we see? What do you do when no one's looking? Who are you? Here's another question in the test. Number 2, what do you do when you don't have time to think? When someone swerves in front of you on the highway, when a policeman knocks on your door, when a lawyer hands you those papers, when you hear the words, "I don't want to be with you anymore," what goes through your mind? What's the first reaction that comes out of your heart? That's who you really are. Another question for the test. Last one here. What do you do when someone can't repay you? Now, that's a little different, but obviously we treat people different people in different ways, I understand, but we shouldn't treat different people with different respect. We're all made in the image of God, right? So we should treat each other with the same respect. But do you treat a rowdy child at the mall any differently than you would treat, say, if you ran into a movie star there or athlete, a famous athlete that you know. Do you treat a man who had just got out of prison any different than a man who might be giving you an interview? Do they get more respect? You know, the answers to these questions tell what kind of heart you have. It's all about what's inside of here, and it really amplifies, and it gives power to who you really are morally. With Captain America, we see what is always true about power. If you take the formula, it's definitely going to make you strong. Yes, but as Dr. Erskine explains in this version of the story, if he's a good man, it will make him great. But if he's a bad man, it's going to make him worse. You know, you may have heard that power corrupts, but it's not necessarily true all the time, is it? You know, if you're bad in your heart, then yes, power will most definitely corrupt and destroy you and the lives of others around you. But if you are good in your heart, you can do those great things in your world, and you can become a hero to many. And that's the theme that you're going to find throughout almost every story ever written about Captain America. Morality is always amplified by power. And that's what happens in the very first book of the Bible, in Genesis. Eve, from Adam and Eve, Eve's reflex tells her that shows her morality whenever she's approached with an opportunity. It's there in the Garden of Eden where we read that she's speaking to a snake. It's a little weird, but we know that snake to be Satan. And he's enticing Eve. And he's making mention of the fruit's beauty, and she declines. He makes mention of its ability to suppress her hunger, and she declines. But then comes the true test. And it's the same test that we're often given. And here's what Genesis 3 says what happened. Eve remembers that God is telling of these consequences from eating the tree, and Satan responds here. He says, "You will not surely die. For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." And that seduced Eve to take the fruit. And that is what seduces us. Power doesn't corrupt. It just amplifies this corruption within us to be like God. And that leads to our final lesson today, that morality is won by spiritual forces. It's won by spiritual forces. You know that if you really start to scratch beneath the surface of all the social issues that are going on in our world today, you're going to start to see that it all comes down to a battle between God and the devil. And whether you're talking about a drug war, trying to overcome the cartel, embezzlement on Wall Street, immigration reform, legalization of marijuana, gun control, men who are really women, or vice versa, whatever the issue is, whatever you want to talk about, it all comes down to a battle between God and the devil. It's really a spiritual battle that's going on here. And maybe you've watched both movies, these Captain America movies, the ones that are most accessible to you. And you think to yourself, I don't remember seeing the devil. Maybe you've read throughout the comics or whatever it may be, and you say that. I don't remember seeing the devil. But you know what? He's there. I want to show you another clip. But if you brought a preteen or maybe someone even younger to the service, you might want to distract them just a bit because it gets pretty intense whenever you see the visuals here. There's a key sentence there at the end of the clip when Schmidt, or the Red Skull, says, "I embrace it without fear." And Captain America says, "Then why are you running?" And what you need to know about the spiritual battle going on around us is that the devil, that Satan, is on the run. Maybe you've read the final book of the Bible. Maybe you've read Revelation, and it's fairly confusing, especially if you're looking for a timeline on the end times. It gets a little confusing. But the plot, the story is pretty simple. We win. The devil knows that he's going to lose, and he's on the run. And we have the power to conquer Satan. It's pretty easy to see the devil all around you if you know what you're looking for. He knows that you are susceptible to certain kinds of sin. You guys know that. And if you were able to use the same kind of schemes, you could put people in harm's way. That's what Satan is doing. He's using schemes, and he knows how to get to us. And if I were the devil, if I were making decisions like he is, you know what I'd do first? I would attack marriages. Because that's the place where children learn right from wrong, and they're going to know that for the rest of their lives. In fact, if I were the devil, I would redefine marriage completely so that it loses all of its historicity, the tradition, the honor, and dignity. If I were the devil, I would make sure that every man and teenage boy would be able to hold pornography in the palm of their hand so that every woman, every mother or wife-to-be would be degraded to an object and not a person. If I were the devil, I would make sure that everyone who is distracted by entertainment, from the moment that they get up, to the moment that you close your eyes, you would have billboards going and glaring at you, screens flashing at you all day long, music blaring in your ears so that you wouldn't ever notice what's going on around you. If I were the devil, I would make sure that the Bible and prayer were taken out of schools completely. So children could not be taught that there is wrong and that there is right. If I were the devil, I would make sure that what was taught at every level about morality isn't about what is right, but more about what is convenient and what feels good to you. You can see it all around you. You know he's at work, and you know that there's these spiritual forces going on around you. And here's what's great about the character of Captain America. What you know about him and his situations is that the battle is won or lost before he even steps into the fight. It's his heart that makes him a hero. It wasn't his strength, and it's going to be the same thing within us. What makes us a hero is what's happening in here. You're going to face some things in your life that are difficult. Some are going through some difficult things right now, and you're finding that if your heart is weak, then you cannot survive a full-on attack of what Satan is bringing your way. You know what? Probably all of us in here, probably each one of us and all of our campuses have this moral issue that we've been battling. Maybe we've been a little bit loose with it. We feel like it really doesn't matter what we do because it's not going to make a difference at the end of the world. And you're saying to yourself, I can't be a hero. No, not with that kind of heart, you can't. If you relax with lust or greed or gluttony or anger management, whatever the moral issue is, if you relax in the things that seem to matter very little, it's going to put a crack in your heart, and the devil's going to exploit it. The reality is this: little things are actually pretty huge. And the Apostle Paul knew it. That's why he wrote to the first church in Ephesus when he said, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places." So what is a small battle at first becomes pretty big. So the question today, as we wrap up our time, what is a small battle that you need to win today so that you can win at the bigger things later? That you can win against the enemy later. Don't relax. Keep working on the small moral issues so that your heart will be purified and be ready in the future. You pray with me. God, we are blessed because we know how true our hearts can make a difference in this world. When we know what you've been doing to capture our hearts. God, my prayer is that we give everything over to you. We don't give up and don't realize or don't give in when it comes to knowing who the winner is going to be. God, we know that we win in the end, God, but we desperately want to be a part of that team. I pray, Father, that as we struggle with this issue of morality, that you make it so very clear to us that even the small things matter and that our heart has to be right for you to win. God, we thank you for your son, Jesus Christ. In his name we pray.